Loki is very interesting because it is different. I've never really seen anything like it in the MCU before, and I kind of like that about it. At first, I was kind of skeptical. The first episode wasn't great, and I'll get into that later, but it picked up in the second and ended up being my favorite MCU show on Disney+, which isn't really saying much, but considering the other contenders. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about what Loki does right, and what it kind of fails at. I'm not a professional critic, so take everything I say with a grain of salt and form your own opinions. If there's anything you think I got wrong or missed, let me know in the comments. Also, spoilers for the MCU and the Loki TV show ahead. Anyway, back to the video. My favorite thing about the show is probably the interaction between the two main characters, Loki and Sylvie.
Wow, I did take quite the tumble.
You arsehole. You killed us!
Maybe we can fix it. Okay.
Who are actually both versions of themselves from different timelines. They have this slightly off-putting and weird romance for each other. It's only weird because they're literally the same person. It's actually perfect if you think about it. Loki is totally a narcissist, and it kind of just drives it home in a good way. Now, even though they are the same person, they feel like different people because they live totally different lives. Sylvie was kidnapped by the TVA when she was a child and forced to run for her entire life, while Loki spent his days literally stabbing people in the back.
You've literally stabbed people in the back like 50 times.
My other favorite thing is the idea of hiding in the apocalypses. This was a really cool idea, and I'm really pleased with how they executed it. The shopping mall bit in Alabama, for example, was an excellent piece of world building and visual design. It was believable and totally looked like a massive hurricane was rampaging through a 2060s mall, or at least what I think it would look like. The scene in Pompeii was also quite cool, as well as proving Loki's point about not being able to affect the timeline correct. Not to mention the masterpiece of a setting that was Lamentis. The showcase of how the rich were getting to leave while the poor were left behind is a really great statement for how a lot of people feel in society in the real world, and how in the end they all lose anyway. The massive moon just ominously breaking apart overhead was also kind of a nice touch. My other favorite thing in the show is probably the humor. It's definitely the most fun I've had watching an MCU show with its signature Marvel humor, but times 10. And they're able to balance emotion with jokes really well throughout the season. Here are a few of my favorites.
What's your name?
Casey.
Give me the Tesseract or I'll gut you like a fish, Casey.
What's a fish?
What's a fish?
How do you not know what a fish is?
I lived my entire life beyond a does.
But what difference does it make?
I want to know exactly what I'm being threatened with before I comply.
Death, Casey. Violent, painful death.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I comply.
This is a mistake. I shouldn't be here.
Hi there. You're probably saying, this is a mistake. I shouldn't even be here.
Let's just say your salad is Asgard.
No,
in this
it's
scenario.
not Asgard. That's
It's
my
a metaphor.
lunch.
Just set fire to the palace.
No, just stop. Don't set fire to the palace.
I can do whatever I want to do. Excuse me?
Oh, God.
You. I just need this for a second. What I do.
No, don't do...
There's the apocalypse.
That's the apocalypse.
Now the music for this show is really, really good. It's really trippy and like a perfect representation of what the character of Loki should be. It has a very like zany and mysterious theme to it, and I just really love it. Just take a listen to a few of these tracks. biggest weakness in my opinion is the first episode and the ending. The first episode feels very boring and silly. It sets up the TVA and Mobius and the Timekeepers, but it kind of feels too dumb to be part of the MCU. It felt really disappointing to know that everything that happened since the beginning of the Marvel movies was all just planned out by some big space lizards. I mean, come on, don't tell me that isn't stupid. Now sure, they reveal more about what it is and what's actually going on later in the show, but at the time, it feels like it was the most ridiculous thing. The only thing I really liked about the episode was how Loki reacted to all of it. Seeing the Infinity Stones that he spent his entire life trying to obtain just being used as paperweights really made me laugh. Now, the ending. What the hell happened? Basically, they visit He Who Remains in a mansion and talk to him for a bit about why he made the TVA. Apparently, a bunch of versions of him thought that their timelines were cooler and all fought over who got to have one. So this guy decided to harness the power of this big dusty dog-looking thing and tell them to eat the other timelines. Then, in order to maintain his sacred timeline, he created the TVA. Now okay, whatever, I guess it makes sense. But I think they could have made it a little bit more clear as to what the heck happens next. Now I'm assuming Mobius showed all the agents the truth, and so they stopped working, causing the timeline to start to split. This ended up causing all the branches to go past the threshold. Sylvie and Loki fight over if they should kill He Who Remains or not. Then Sylvie just shoves Loki into the TVA before killing He Who Remains. The confusing part, for me, was the very last scene. Loki wanders around the TVA and eventually finds Mobius and B-15 talking about the branch timelines. Loki tells them it was a mistake and many versions of He Who Remains were coming. Then Mobius is just like,
Who are you? What's your name?
Boots on the ground now, archives.
Who are you?
Then the show just ends. Now I'm sure this was on purpose, and if I had to guess, Sylvie threw Loki into a different timeline where he was never there. Still, I think it could have been explained a lot better. Like, they played out the previous scenes as if it was the same timeline and everything, and they sort of just switched it so it would fit with this twist. I'm probably just dumb, but I was very confused at this ending. I'm hoping he gets sorted out next time we see Loki. Oh, also the logo sucks. Like, what the hell is that monstrosity? It's supposed to be like representations of different Lokis or something? Loki as a character isn't what I was expecting. Now keep in mind, Loki in this show is not the same one who got crushed under Thanos' grasp. He was plopped right from New York directly preceding the battle he had failed to win. With defeat still fresh in his mind, he is thrown into a strange place where nobody seems to care who he is and where nothing he has ever done even matters. He quickly realizes he actually has no say in what goes on even after multiple attempts at escape or conquer. Again, the moment he saw those Infinity Stones, nothing more than desk ornaments, he realized he was dealing with something way out of his control. This is when his character shifts a bit. He becomes more, not much more, cooperative to work with Mobius and try to find the superior Loki. Just the idea of there being another Loki out there who was clearly better than him really smashed his ego, so he would obviously try to help and correct it. Of course, we know what ends up happening. He falls in love with his better version of himself, and they go on a great quest to find and kill the Timekeepers. Very interesting turn of events in my opinion. Not bad, but interesting. He learns to be more trustworthy, not much more, but as much as Loki can be, as well as helping Sylvie become more trusting. This was a really good step for Loki as a character, and I think they did a really good job with him. Now, the other characters in the show aren't as great as Loki and Sylvie, but some of them are definitely worth talking about. Mobius and Ravonna have an interesting relationship. It's something that kind of confused me towards the end because of how quickly she turned on him and how quickly he turned on her. It's almost like eons of friendship weren't really thought about when writing their final interactions. At first, they seemed like a good professional relationship with each other. Mobius being very loyal to Ravonna, and Ravonna respecting and understanding Mobius. This all changed once Mobius learns the truth and decides to go against the TVA with Loki and Sylvie. In fact, why was he so quick to switch sides? He wasn't even shown his past. And why the hell did Ravonna just instantly decide, well, I guess he's too dangerous to be kept alive, and just pruned him right there and then? She says later that she didn't want to jeopardize what they had going at the TVA, but still, that was a lifelong friendship just down the drain. One thing I thought was a fun idea was the different variants of Loki in the Void. I haven't read much of the comic, so I'm probably not getting any of the references, but I thought it was still pretty funny to see a bunch of different types of Loki fighting it out in a small bunker. That was just another thing that sort of made me be like, okay, well yeah, that definitely shows that he's a narcissist. Overall, Loki was a great show, and I'm excited to see what they do with him in Doctor Strange 2 and in Season 2 of this show. It had some good laughs, great characters, and an amazing world that I'm still fascinated with. Thank you for watching, and if you did enjoy listening to my weird opinions, consider adding to my already overinflated ego and subscribe. Anyway, if you want to see more of this kind of content, just let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to work on more things like this. Bye!